I want to allude to what I mentioned at the top of the hour was you do host a blog or a podcast, I should say. Well, you do write
Yeah,
on a blog as well.
a little bit of both.
Yeah, and through that, you've done the genius move of here's a vehicle for you to talk to a lot of interesting people and learn a lot from them by having a podcast. It's
Yeah.
genius, right? And through that process, I want to pick your brain on how you have seen value particularly evolve in recent years through your guests' eyes, through what they brought in their discussions, uh, either from the internal organization perspective or from the client's perspective on what they're demanding of us, or both.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, I think people look, especially because we deal a lot with technology, and some, and really the concept of us is creativity and and ingenuity in the legal field. And what is kind of consistent is, people are quick to admit that, lawyers aren't exactly the quickest to adapt to change. But I think, you know, guest after guest after guest we had are people that are out there finding ways to improve the overall process of, one or more things. And it could be as little as, how do I improve the creation of a contract, or how do I improve the billable hour, if I go to alternative fees. We're looking at all kinds of different things, and I'm finding there's some really, really creative people out there. And one of the arguments that you hear a lot is, and I think we heard it earlier when we talked when Professor Wilkins was talking about the billable hour. I think there were some comments, and even he mentioned that really kind of promotes inefficiency. Um, but I think when you really talk to attorneys, no one wants to be inefficient. No one wants to take longer to do something than it really takes them to do. No one wants that mind numbing work, just because so they can pad hours. If you give people choices, you give them real alternatives, you take away uncertainty in the products, which is a lot of times the key resistance to change is not that they're not willing to change, but you're giving them so much uncertainty that they're not sure if on the other side of this, am I just going to have to go back to what I was doing before? And so I see a lot of that where people are really energized, energetic, are willing to take on new ideas and try new things, much more than I think we thought, when we started the blog in I think 2008.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hopefully that, I don't know if I danced around your question there. So
No, you did, and in the last 2 years has only accelerated that, I'm sure, and forced people into situations where maybe before it was a luxury to, oh, we can dabble in this and try that, to the point where no, we must do this to either serve the client or sometimes even keep the lights on.
yeah, and I think we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago that he said something interesting, and he is over at Fulbright or Norton Rose, so a large law firm. He's in charge of their innovation. Not a lawyer, was a business, had created his own business, and he believes that, in the infinite legal needs of the client. In other words, you're not going to run out of the legal needs of clients by improving your efficiency. You're not going to somehow go, oh well, if we do this in 2 hours instead of 5 hours, we're not going to have any work. No, you're going to be able to fill that void, and you're actually going to be doing much better work in the long run. And so I think that's one of the things when you hear people say, well, we don't want to be efficient because it's going to cost us money. I would immediately fight back on that one.
Yeah, and I think our panelists coming up later are going to speak to exactly that, because they've made those new opportunities. They've had more work that they can deal with, so it's clearly not a zero-sum game that we're dealing with here.
Right.
Um, Along these lines, we have a lot of people watching who are probably solo practitioners or small firm attorneys from around the country, specifically in Illinois, probably mostly. What can you tell them that are turnkey solutions that they can implement today? Because a lot of times, let's be frank, we walk away from CLEs and we literally turn off the computer or return to our desk physically, and it's business as usual. We don't make change. What can be the thing? You mentioned one part of your conversation near the first pillar, I think it was, talking about what are the steps that clients take to reach your door and analyzing that. Can you talk a little bit about that more, and maybe what I'm thinking is, process mapping? Is that what you're talking about, or is there more to it?
Yeah, I mean, that there could very well be. I know that if you were to give a private poll to the people that are in this audience, to see those who are over 40 who have a will, I bet it's a low number. And this is a very astute audience. The problem I think that we have with most, especially when it comes to smaller solo firms, is there is a lot of need out there, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty and ignorance, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, it's just that people don't realize the legal services that they need, and I think part of the problem is I think a lot of us are very reactive, where we kind of wait for people to come in. And I'm a librarian by trade, so I know what it means to sit at a reference desk and wait for somebody to ask me a question. But I think one of the things in this, I mean, there's a lot around to unpack around this, but being able to inform the public of what legal services they should be doing, almost like an annual checkup, like you would do with your doctor. That you shouldn't wait until you feel the pain in order to go to the doctor. You should be going and getting checkups every year. I think there's a number of things, and I'm sure lots of solo and small firms are doing this already. But there's I think a misconception of how expensive legal services are. I looked at one report and it said the average American spends about $159 a year on legal services. I mean, which is insane. And so, I mean, and obviously, I think there's probably a wide range within there, but that means a lot of people are spending zero. And so there's opportunity there. But the thing is just like lawyers and the uncertainty, the public has uncertainty as well. There is a misconception that any legal services are too expensive for them to take on. And it's just not the case. And so I think a lot of it, depending on what the rules are, but being out in the community, is getting that knowledge to that community that you serve, of what it is that this profession provides for that community, and building that up, I think is one of the things that that it's one of the lowest hanging fruits out there.
I hear you loud and clear. And I heard someone refer to it the other day as, how will you as a lawyer with your legal services get into the workflow of your clients? And they were referring to large organizations, even corporations, but the exact same analogy can be made towards individuals. How do you, we all hopefully do annual checkups with our doctor and so forth like that. Why can't we do that for legal, and why shouldn't we? To prove your point. I want to keep moving though, because we got a lot of questions, and I want to refer to one question about law school. You ended on that pillar, and the question by James here poses, what about limiting law school maybe to 2 years and doing the third year as an apprenticeship model, and maybe other countries have tried this similar model. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan, I think, is one state that has looked at that in the past, of going to a 2-year model with an apprenticeship. I, for one, and I think you hear a lot of legal scholars and others talk about this, is that does the graduating law school studying for 2 months to take the bar exam, taking a 2-day bar exam, and then if you pass, then you're given the golden ticket to practice law. Is that better than, say, working 1,800 hours of an apprenticeship under a practicing attorney? I mean, it, to me, it doesn't seem like there's that there's any disadvantage in having that alternative path. And so by taking your law school, reducing the cost by 1/3. Now I will throw this out. The law school can't then increase its tuition cost by 50% to make up for that loss, because then you really do have a zero-sum game. But you want to make sure that you're getting more people out at less of a burden for them in the long run, in order to provide the services that we need. And again, if we're not willing to do that, we got to find someone else that we can allow to fill that need, because we can't just say, well, we're not going to do it, but we're not going to allow anybody else to do it either. It's just not fair.
Well, let me turn that question to post law school in a way. You mentioned Kat Moon, and I know her and Allison Carroll at Northwestern Law and some other academics have come up with the Delta model lawyer as one example of measuring competency, or kind of to replace or advance the T-shaped model lawyer. But the gist of it being, there's more, like Professor Wilkins said, there's more than just the substantive law that should be learned out there, be it people skills, communication, the business of law, and all that goes with that. How do you do that from not just law school perspective, but we have to keep learning our whole career? How do you either supplement or put that into the CLE model to get lawyers continually on track to understand the proper competency, Rule 1.1, right there at the top, and put that together in a package that equates to value? How do we reflect that in the value that we keep having to evolve as our society evolves?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and I kind of pick on the bar associations in time when this type of question comes up, is that there's not just one recipe for how you get professional development and continuing legal education in the practice of law. One of the things that I think a lot of first year associates, or those that are hanging their shingle, is at the end of the day, yeah, we like to call this a profession. It's really a business, and it almost doesn't matter if you're in a government entity, or if you're in private, or you're working for someone. You're running your department, you're running your small business, you're managing budgets, you're having to follow the chain of command. There's so many things that you have to do, and I think we really do not prepare our law students for that huge portion of what it means to practice law. Is that there's a huge business component in this industry. It is a legal industry as well as a legal profession. And again, I think so when it comes to continuing education, I think we're very good. I mean, we almost rely upon lawyers to teach lawyers. That it has to be a 50-minute block in order to get one credit hour. That there's just so many hard, fast rules. And really, I think it would be advantageous to bar associations that have these types of requirements to be extremely flexible and to try new things when it comes to encouraging its members to advance their professional development in the practice of law. That it's not always about learning a legal topic. That sometimes it's about balancing the checkbook. It's about relationships with the client or with the community. And so there's so many other things, and it would be so easy, but it's a change. And I think, and that goes back to that uncertainty. There might be some uncertainty for the bar associations on how they would be able to handle that, and what it looks like on the other side. But man, I just think there's just so many other opportunities out there to help educate practicing lawyers to be more well-rounded members of the community.
Yeah, and it benefits them, it benefits the clients, and
Yeah.
it makes them all around the tidewaters raise, hopefully at the end of the day. I want to bring up a question from Bridget here, who addresses access to justice. What is the best single action that an individual attorney in a small law firm should take to increase A to J?
Whew. I would say one of the things that I like, and I actually heard Bill Henderson mention this before, is make it easier and faster for your clients to get the things that they need, the legal needs that they have, faster and cheaper, and by using, not necessarily by the lawyer having to do all of the work, but to find ways to streamline the process, to use paralegals and paraprofessionals, to leverage people that are willing to do a lot of the basic work. And I think my example for Travis County, Texas is a good example, is that it doesn't necessarily need to be a legal situation. It could be a paperwork situation. It could be how in the world, how you speed up to get the information quicker to the attorney for what she needs to do, and then back to the client, so that it's, you're not just, you don't want the attorney doing work that could be done by somebody that is, paid half the cost or
Right.
less. And so I think, if you can look at your workflow on how it is that you in process your clients, how you get them to a certain point that then you're needed to step in. If you can speed that up and you can delegate that, and again, maybe the bar needs to come in and buffer some of that process. Again, there's the uncertainty. I think that's one of the ways that you could really improve the amount of access to justice that that can be served to the community.
Yeah, when you're speaking there, Greg, what came to my mind that is right on point. I mean, and you mentioned bar associations, I think is a great way to help with this, in addition to state, maybe judicial commissions, access justice commissions at the state level, is limited scope representation. For example, that's where you're seeing opportunities for lawyers to do things in a different way, and maybe at the end of the day, their monetary gains from that is just as equal as their contributions to access to justice improvement. And they may not even realize that, but a bar association may be the spark, the nudge to get those practitioners moving down that kind of path that they otherwise would just say, I'm not even going to try that because it's business as usual. Right.
Right.
I want to bring up kind of a buzz topic that's been popular over the recent years too, and that's data and data analytics. You almost have to bring that up when you're talking about measuring value and putting both quantitative and qualitative measurements on things. But it's so true. We have such a strange profession, unlike it's always compared to the medical profession, where a doctor can order x-rays and blood work and so on to evaluate a case, where what do lawyers do when they have clients coming to them with mostly the most important conflicts of their life many times? And what do lawyers do? We rely on limited experiences at best, and at worst hunches about evaluating that case.
Or pardon the interruption emails.
Right. So How have you seen, from your perspective and the people you've talked to, the functionality of data involving itself in how we help our clients, i.e., apply value to our clients? Over how has that evolved recently, and where do you see that going, whether it be in big law or whether it be in the solo practitioner?
Yeah, I think one thing is, and really one of the exciting things when it comes to data analytics is the reason why we're at a point that we are right now. And that is that computer processing speeds have skyrocketed. And with cloud-based computing and storage, it's enabled the massive amount of just grinding through large pieces of information. Something that, even 8 years ago would have been nearly impossible to do. And so it's really opened up a lot of opportunities. And I think there's some things that you're seeing that maybe labeled as artificial intelligence or natural processing language. I always, if you've listened to my show at all, I always say that when it comes to legal tech, the phrase AI lives at the corner of PR and BS. And so you got to really be careful with what you have. But because of, to get back around to your question now, but because of the availability of being able to crunch large amounts of data and being able to get that information out, you're seeing companies that fast case, for example, which I think does Illinois have a fast case?
Yes.
So I mean, if you look at some of the products they're doing, some of the analytic tools that they're doing with both their primary and some of their secondary companies, I mean, you would have had to spend millions of dollars to get that just a few years ago, and now it's almost available to anyone that's practicing law. And so by that availability of data and analytics and being able to look at the court information, the judge information against opposing counsel information, you just have so much more information that you can look at and evaluate. And just like I had mentioned with speeding up the process of getting your client's work done, well, this you don't necessarily need to have another licensed lawyer in the room that's crunching that information. You could have somebody that's coming in and giving you a report and saying, hey, we pulled this information down. Here's how long we think this is going to take. This is what the chances are of settlement on the other side. Here's the typical amount that the settlement amount. There's so much more information out there available, so much cheaper than it was before, that I think we're at a point now where almost anyone can take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, did I get a little too excited on that one?
No, rightfully so, because it's hard not to be, especially people like us who we have these conversations often, but we also go to conferences with other people who get excited about this thing, and it's important, and that's why we're having this conversation, to bring it out in the purview of all these attendees, and hopefully they will pivot to at least try something new. If nothing else, think about it. But that brings up another concept that both Professor Wilkins and Haley Moss got to speak on, that keeps coming up, and I think very rightfully so, is generational differences. And I wanted to turn that question to you in a way. Where do you see this discussion constantly of, and it's kind of almost gotten routine, where you hear, oh, how are you serving the millennial client differently than you have all your clients over the past 20, 30 years for some of us. And now the Gen Z is coming out the door and entering the consumer base themselves, not only the law school base, but we're going to be working both for them and with them if we aren't already. Where do you see that fitting into value or measuring value? Again, from the tail wagging the dog on what we're changing from the demands of the consumer to the internal processes.
Yeah, One of the things, and looking at this as especially like Gen Z coming in, because they are right at they are entering in the profession right now, not the law school. They're already in law school. They're entering in as practicing attorneys now. And I have three Gen Z children, so that range from 20 to 25. And they're really what I would refer to as the see something, say something generation, and that's what they were taught, right? If they see something that looks wrong, they're not going to go and just tell. They're not going to go up one step on the chain of command and say something there. They're going to go all the way to the top, and they're going to say something that, and so, and we've had that happen here, where somebody says something, then the member goes all the way up to the managing partner and says, "Hey, this is wrong. What are you going to do about it? And I want total transparency on this. And here's what I want you to do. And I want you to completely keep me, the first year who's been in the door like 3 days, keep me in the loop on everything that you're doing to satisfy this need that I have." And I don't necessarily, I mean, I think some of the delivery on that may be wrong, and maybe over time, uh, uh, you know, they'll learn that chain of command and how things are. But it's also very exciting to see them shake up the industry, and shake up business, the culture within. And so I'm very positive on the people coming into the industry. When it comes to the clients that are being served, I think, obviously, I think the biggest issue right now is this country has become so polarized that there is no middle ground anymore. And I think that really kind of affects the, the approach that clients are coming to lawyers with. It may also affect who they decide will be their lawyer. And it's, and that's a real shame, because I think you necessarily shouldn't always just pick someone who may be politically aligned with you. But I don't know that I don't know that we can change that. I think that horse may be already out of the barn.
I like how you're bringing this up near the close of the town hall, Greg. You're very. I do want to get to a question that David posed, which is a very open-ended question, and I have my reactions, but I want to hear yours, Greg. How does any of this advance professionalism? What's the connection between this conference, the theme, and professionalism in your view?
Well, I think the simplest answer on that is, when you look at the topic, both of the conference and of this talk, is that you have to look at what your value is for the person that's receiving the value. And that the professionalism, again, is, yeah, it's a state of rules that maybe the bar association sets up, that this is, this we guide these, if you follow these rules, you're professional. But I think also the fact is that, professionalism is also how you are perceived as well. And if you don't take the time, and I think Professor Watkins or Wilkins mentioned this before, if you don't take the time to listen and, put your ear to the ground, uh, read the room, and be able to react to how your community is viewing you and your value, then you don't really know where to start to improve that. And I think if you look at how you improve the value, I think value and the professionalism can go hand in hand on this. By changing some of the things on how we do doesn't make us less professional. It just changes how we administer justice and support the community and our clients. And so I think, in a way, not being able to look at it from the client or the community's point of view, to me, may be the most unprofessional thing of all. If you're just looking through your own eyes and your own interpretation on how things should be, you're going to miss a lot. So I think that part really reflects on the professionalism of the practice of law.
Well, I think that's an absolutely perfect place to end the conversation from your perspective, Greg. I really appreciate your time and energy and presentation today. It's been fantastic. Thanks for being with us.
All right. Thank you, Mark.